So the heart can be corrupted by sin, scars, and a spiritual enemy. But the Bible has something even more shocking to tell us about our hearts. It tells us that our hearts are born corrupted. Not just that they can be corrupted, but that they are naturally corrupt from the very beginning, and that they naturally lean towards darkness. The Bible calls it the sinful nature, and it tells us that we have inherited it from Adam and Eve. Therefore, we all start off broken from day one. David wrote, "For I was born a sinner, yes, from the moment my mother conceived me." This idea is hugely offensive to many. Indeed, Malcolm Muggeridge once said that the depravity of man is at once the most empirically verifiable reality, but at the same time, the most intellectually resisted fact. We just don't like to think of ourselves as being inherently sinful, and yet the evidence that we are just surrounds us. The sinful nature is why you don't need to teach children to steal cookies from the cookie jar before dinner and then lie about it when they're caught with chocolate all over their face.
What, are you eating something?
No.
That comes naturally to them. You don't need to teach them to selfishly grab things that another child is playing with either. That will happen instinctively. You don't need to teach them how to throw a tantrum when they don't get their own way. That is inherent. Indeed, isn't it clear that half the job of a parent is to teach their children to fight against their own nature? Good parenting is to teach children not to lie, not to be disobedient, not to take things that belong to others, and not to throw tantrums when they don't get their own way. It's to point their kids to something above their base instinct, something above their own nature. It's to teach them how to be honest even when it won't serve them to be, how to be obedient even when it means self-denial, how to share and give toys to others even at their own expense. Those are the things that take work. And that's because parents are trying to overcome an inherent leaning towards selfishness that exists within all human beings. The problem doesn't go away as we grow older either. Adults sin too. At the worst extreme, selfish, sinful natures lead to stuff like this. But even if we look back at just our own lives, we'll all remember numerous actions that we regret, times when we were wrong, and moments when our behaviour fell way below the level we expect of ourselves. Indeed, if a movie were to be shown of every deed, word and thought we've ever had, I doubt any of us could watch the whole thing through. The shame in our darkest moments would just be too much to bear. What's more, we're going to sin again in the future. As hard as we all try not to, we just can't help it. This is why the Bible says, "For all have sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard." Jesus explains where the sinful nature is rooted when he says, "For from the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, all sexual immorality, theft, lying and slander. These are what defile you. For better or for worse, the heart is where it all begins." There's a shocking gravity to what the Bible and indeed the facts of human nature are telling us here. If we're all broken from the very beginning and sin is in our very nature, then how will the world ever be free of pain? The great hope for humanity has always been peace on earth. No war, no famine, no heartache, and no suffering. Throughout all history, there has always been some idea of a distant utopia driving us, that we feel that we could reach if we only put our minds to it and committed to getting along with each other. But if sin actually lives within us, if we're all predisposed towards greed, lying, theft, adultery, gossip, slander, and all the rest from within our innermost being, then how can we ever realistically hope for a better world? We can't, because try as we might, our propensity for sin will always bring the whole thing crashing down again. We can't fully override our own sinful natures. The enemy is within us. We are the problem here. It reminds me of when the Times newspaper sent out an inquiry to famous authors asking the question, "What is wrong with the world today?" G.K. Chesterton replied, "Dear Sir, I am. Yours, G.K. Chesterton." That just about sums it up, and therefore we're forced to admit that this is all starting to look rather hopeless. It looks like humanity is destined to carry on forever with the same old wars and inequality and corruption that has always defined life on Earth. Any idea of utopia is just a pipe dream. The only thing that could really fix this whole problem is if we could somehow be given new hearts. That's where the root of the problem is after all. We would need a kind of inner spiritual regeneration. We would need a new nature even. Imagine it. Imagine a world where everyone's hearts were naturally selfless, where stealing held no attraction but only giving, where no one had any desire to lie so always told the truth, where adultery made hearts recoil in disgust so everyone remained faithful. If we could fix the sinful nature, Nature, we would automatically fix every social problem on earth. New hearts, new natures, regenerated spirits in the hearts of men and women everywhere would mean utopia. No longer would sin and destruction flow out of us, but instead only love and truth. In healing ourselves, we would soon heal society. Every single person on the planet would not only know the right thing, but crucially, would always want to choose the right thing. There would be no more war within our hearts, no more cognitive dissonance, no more restless hypocrisy, just peace and integrity. Now here's the best part, the exciting part, the part that should give us butterflies in our stomach. The Bible tells us that all of this is actually possible. It's true. New hearts, spiritual regeneration. It's not just a nice thought, it can happen. But here's the catch. It's only possible with God. Why? Because we can only know what right and wrong is with God, and we can only choose right over wrong with God. In this first section, we're going to focus on the knowing part. We're going to explore how it's only possible to know the difference between good and evil when we know God.